There's something about fishing that stirs up an energy and excitement from deep within us. It could come from landing a personal best fish or by helping someone land their first fish ever. It's stories shared around the dinner table, and after a day on the water, the goal of learning more about the wonders that surround us. To us, it's the things that give our lives purpose and meaning. These are the stories told by the avid, the dedicated, and the passionate. This is the Love of Fishing Podcast. The Love of Fishing Podcast is proudly powered by Peter's Tackle and sponsored by Freedom Tackle, Silver Salmon, Dreamweaver, Team Underdog Cutbait, and Grimsby Tackle. Hello everybody, and welcome to Season 2 of the Love of Fishing Podcast, made possible by Peter's Tackle. I'm your host, Lyle Gator, and it is a great joy to bring you this year's show. Like in the past, I hope that you find listening to this show entertaining, informative, and also enjoyable as you spend time out of your busy day to join us here on the Love of Fishing Podcast. I hope that through the show we can continue to build a positive fishing community around us, one that encourages people to get into the game and the wonderful sport of fishing, to conserve the great resources that we have here in Ontario, and to also connect with friends and family through a great activity that gets us outside. Guys, it is a labor of love, and it's something that I'm very proud to be doing yet again this year on Season 2 of the show. If you're new to the show, thank you very much for joining. We are on Spotify this year. We've added that platform so that we can better reach people who couldn't find us before on YouTube. That being said, Season 1 is on YouTube. Season 2 will also be on YouTube, so don't forget to check us out there if you're listening on Spotify right now. There's a few people that I'd like to thank that have helped make this year's show possible. Those are our supporting sponsors. A big thank you to Freedom Tackle, Grimsby Tackle, Team Underdog Cutbait, the Silver Salmon Challenge, and Team Dreamweaver for making the Love of Fishing Podcast possible this year. Guys, I know that you have a lot of choices when you hit the stores to do some fishing shopping. Try and remember these guys because they love fishing too. Looking ahead at what we have to offer for Season 2, we have a lot of great guests joining the show yet again. Some notable names are Jeff Gussie Gustafson from the Elite Series, Tim Allard, who's a columnist and big-time writer here in Ontario. We have Moby Nick Foxcroft coming in from the Silver Salmon Challenge, James McGregor from Advanced Taxidermy, Tyler Dunn from Tyler Dunn Guiding, Andrew Walker from Cast and Conquer Guide Service, as well as Ron Arnold from the Ontario Ministry of Natural Resources, who will be talking about what it's like to be a conservation officer in Ontario. I've assembled this lineup of guests to hopefully appeal to a wide audience, covering a variety of topics that deal with all aspects of fishing, understanding that the world of fishing is very large, and how we might understand it today is important, but how we might understand it tomorrow is also important in many different ways, whether it's the artistic side through something like taxidermy, or the more political side dealing with rules and regulations held up by the OM&R. And it's really my goal through this show to give a broad look at what fishing is in Ontario and beyond. Guys, without any further ado, let's jump into the first episode of Season 2 of the Love of Fishing Podcast. I'm going to be stealing the show for the first episode, answering a question that I get a lot, and that is, how do I become a fishing guide? This is something that I get asked, I would say, at least monthly, by people looking to get into the fishing industry and who may see what I'm doing, who want to do something similar or the same thing. And this is a question that a lot of guides won't answer. They won't give people the time of day. And I know that in the past, it's something that I've told people, look, I'm going to do some content on it. Just wait for the content. And it's not because I don't want to give them the time. It's because it's a complex question to answer. There's no do this, 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 and this, and you will become this. It's dynamic, and I think it's different for everybody, depending on where you're coming from, depending on what your skills are, and really how you want to make it a part of your life. A couple sort of sub-questions that I get asked that I can answer first are, is there a course I can take to become a guide? And who can I ask for help when I want to become a guide? In terms of there being a course, there is a course that you can take to become a guide. And I think in the simplest sense, if you look up a guy named Mitch Miller or anybody who's running marine first aid courses, small vessel operator proficiency courses, and these legal things that you need to be able to be held accountable and responsible on the water for your guests, and also to obtain legal insurance. These are great ways to start researching if you're looking to become a guide. There are some requirements that you have as an operator to make sure that you have a safe vessel. If your boat is older than 15 years, you need to receive a survey from a licensed surveyor to prove that you have a seaworthy vessel. So there are courses that you can take that will give you the legal ability to be a guide. As far as people that you can talk to for help on becoming a guide, I would suggest doing your own research and looking at what guides have done in the past. Understand your market wherever you are. If you're in Ontario, how long is your season going to be? What kind of species are around you? And I would say that having a really, really good understanding of your local fishery, or where the fishery is that you're going to be guiding, you have to understand that inside and out. And I think that for me, being a young guide, that is one of the most daunting things. And one of the things that, when I think about what I'm doing, I'm always very conscious, am I offering the right kinds of trips? Am I able to guide to the skill level that I need to when I have clients? And I think that I can do that. You have to be honest with yourself as an angler. Do I have the chops? It's sort of the same thing in music. If you're going to try out for the Boston Pop Symphony, are you a great horn player, or can you play the songs that they need you to play? And I think as an angler, you have to be honest. I've tried to keep up with that through my tournament angling, and always aspiring to be a great tournament fisherman, because I think that tournaments are one of the best ways that you can both promote yourself, prove that you're a great angler, and also really dial in on your fishery. Really be focused and have a purpose behind why you go out and go fishing. I also want to make it really clear that through telling my story, I'm always learning. I never stop learning every day that I'm out on the water. Every opportunity that I have to learn about fishing, to become a better angler, I'm taking that up upon myself to do. This video is not about saying that I figured everything out about fishing or any of that. That couldn't be farther from the truth. So keep that in mind. If you are working towards your goal, you have to be open to always learning more about whatever you're doing. I think it's also important to say that even though I say, there's these courses and these things that you have to do to become a guide, I think it's really important as someone who does things in a legit way, and there's a bunch of us that do it legit, that it's really important to us that there's a standard in the industry. And I'm sure we all know somebody who, advertises that they do charters, but they're not really insured, they haven't done first aid, and they're just not doing it legit. And unfortunately, these people sort of bring down the image of what the industry could be here in the Great Lakes, especially. And it's unfortunate. So, I just want to say to anybody who's listening, who's thinking about booking a charter, there's lots of great operators out there that are insured, that have done their safety training, that have safe boats. And those are the guys that might be charging a little bit more. But when it comes down to providing a great customer service and a great experience for people to maybe get engaged with the fishery, I can't stress enough that there's a big difference between the guys that do it legit and the guys that don't. So I just want to add that in here. I don't want things to seem like, hey, anybody can be a guide, and you just gotta advertise and be a good fisherman. It's not like that, and it shouldn't be like that. Because right now, we got a lot of guys on both sides. So I just want to add that in, and hopefully that clarifies. So I want to jump back to some of the early days, how I developed those skills. It's sort of my story growing up, and where I first became involved in the fishing industry, and how that love sort of generated into this goal of one day becoming a fishing guide. And it really all started at Peter's Tackle. And it's amazing for me as now a podcast host and a guide to have Angela and her team on board as the presenting sponsor for the show. It's been a wild ride. I started working there when I was 17 in grade 11. I worked there for a summer job, and that was one of the best experiences of my life. I got to work at a store that I'd always loved shopping at, and I got to, hone my customer service skills and learn so much about fishing in the area. Working at a tackle store as a customer, you're always hoping that the people in the store will offer you that local knowledge. If you're coming from out of town to fish there, or if you're new to the area and you're looking to pick up some starting points on how to fish the area, you always start at the local tackle store, and they're a real asset to you if it's a good store. And I think my opportunity to work with Angela and friends that I have today that are very close to me was one of the best things that could have ever happened to me. So I started working there, and from there, I became involved in fishing some of the local tournaments through the St. Catharines Game and Fish. I fished as much as I could through high school, although I never skipped class. After school, I would go fishing. On the weekends, I would fish, and eventually it got to a point where I won a tournament. And this is where I got noticed by somebody at the tournament, and they said, hey, we have this boat up in Mississauga. We're looking for a deckhand. And this was when I was just entering university. So it was a good time for me to transition from working at the tackle store to maybe getting some more on the water knowledge on how things worked. So I took the chance. And this is something that not a lot of people know about me and my angling story, is that when I started to work in Mississauga on Unreal charters, I was driving from St. Catharines. So I had to be in Mississauga at 5 a.m. So for the 2 summers that I worked there, I woke up every morning in the summer at 3:30, and I drove to Mississauga. I would work a 6-hour trip in the morning. We had an hour where we had to clean the boat, and then we had another 6-hour trip in the afternoon. So I'd work from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m., and then I'd drive home, and I'd do it all again. And I did that for 2 summers. So that's really where I feel like I got tough, and I, developed that ability to maintain my energy level for whatever that is, 14 hours, with limited sleep and learning. Oh my goodness, learning when you're on the water every day like that. You learn so much about how things change throughout a day, change throughout a week. You learn how to read weather, and just so many on the water skills that you pick up by being around it. So like I said, I did that for 2 years. It was amazing. It was an amazing experience to learn and to do. And through that time, I really decided that, yes, I love doing this, and I love being on the water a lot, and I love taking people out and showing them the fishery and showing them, what we have here in Ontario. And that was a time where I was in university, and I was working towards a degree in geography, which I took as many opportunities there as I could to learn about the ecosystem, learn about nature and the area, the geology of the area, things that I could incorporate through my experiences one day being, a self-sufficient guide. So after I worked at Unreal, I took 2 years where I didn't guide, and I went through school. I finished my degree at Brock. I got an honors degree in geography, and this was really important, and I want to share this for people who are thinking about becoming a guide, especially young people. Time on the water is very valuable, and it's something that is basically, you can't put a price on it when you think about the skills that you need to develop to be a guide. That being said, as a young person, I am super glad, and I would recommend highly that you go and get an education, because the next part of my journey is really what made things happen for me. And it wasn't on the water, it was at a desk job. And I'll explain. What you have to understand about becoming a guide is that you can have all the skills in the world, but if you don't have a boat, in order to make a go of it and do a good job, it's a lot harder to become a guide if you don't have a boat. I don't think it's impossible, but I think it's a lot easier to do if you have a boat, because having a boat offers, the sightseeing aspect, and it offers something that deserves, the money that you hope to make. And what you need to be able to charge to make a decent living at it, and to make a go of it, you have to have a boat so that you can take people out to spots that they otherwise couldn't get to. So I started working at the regional government. I did well in school. I got a good government job, and my plan from there was always to work as long as I could there so that I could save up enough money to get a boat, get things going, because starting a business doesn't just happen. You need money behind you, and you have to be smart about how you get that money and about how you use your time away from that job to build your dream. And I will say that was the hardest part, was working full-time at this job and pouring myself entirely outside of the job towards building my brand, towards still honing my skills, being on the water as much as I could, marketing, writing articles, doing all these things that when I hit the go button, when things were finally in place that I could start, that I had a decent background behind me. So for 2 years, I worked full-time, and I worked full-time outside of that. And I would say I was spending probably 70 to 80 hours a week, working, whether it was at the desk job or outside of it. And from there, I had saved up enough money that I could buy my first boat. And I did that, and I launched Hooked on Niagara in 2019. So I've been doing this now for 3 years on my own. I guided 2 years before that. And from there, it's a grind. I want to be really honest in this video, and I want to say that things don't go from A to B how you think they might. There's going to be things that test you, and certainly the amount of hours that you have to put into this is exceptional. And you have to be willing to make a lot of sacrifices personally and in your personal life to achieve, and where a lot of people want to be if they want to be a guide. And that's hard. It's not for everybody. And I remember one time working at Peter's, and Paul Castellano used to come in and buy stuff there. I remember Josh and I were talking to him, and he said, guys, you have to be absolutely nuts to do this. And I can honestly say that was the best advice, that I could have heard when I was starting to think about, thinking about doing this. You really have to make sacrifices, give up your time, give up your weeknights, even when you're not fishing, to be marketing, to be fixing stuff, to be preparing gear. Truly, whether you want to do it full-time or part-time, it's a full-time job. That's not to discourage anybody. This video is about, inspiring people to follow their heart. And I want to let the young people know that are listening that it's possible to do. But don't let it rule you. Take breaks, have patience with yourself. I'm a very driven person, and sometimes my greatest weakness is that I don't have patience. I want things to happen quickly. I want, whether it's to become a better angler in some way, or, for some part of my business to do better. Have patience with yourself. It will all work out as long as you maintain the right attitude. So, those 2 years, those were pretty incredible. And now as an operator, just trying to keep a balance of my time, being on the water a lot, being off the water, spending that time fixing things. I'd say if you're hoping to become a guide, unless you can buy a brand new boat, you have to be open to learning how to work on your own stuff. The scheduling nightmares of being out of the water because of a repair are a reality. And if you can fix your own stuff, it helps a lot. I'm not the world's most handy person, but I've developed some skills through just needing to be able to do it, that I can do a lot of the wiring on my boat, some basic service on my motors, like oil changes. Those things all save you money, and they make you more self-sufficient. And I'd say if you're looking to do this, don't just think about the fishing side of things. You have to think about the whole picture, about the mechanics, about being a marketer, about being everything that you need to be for your business. If you can do it yourself, it will get you a lot quicker to your destination, because you don't have to keep paying other people to do those things. So yeah, definitely keeping a seaworthy vessel is a huge part of this, and always keeping up with trends in fishing. How you can continue to be a great angler and show your customers good techniques, good practices on the water as far as courtesy, safety. Man, safety is a huge thing. And this past year, I purchased float suits for my customers for when we're fishing cold water. Little things like that show that you respect your customers and, that you want to have them comfortable and safe when they're with you on the water goes a long way. So those are all things that I've thought about over the past few years as I've learned and grown. When it comes down to becoming a guide, where we started was take these courses and you can become a guide. But really there's so much more, and I haven't shared everything here, of course, I can't. But these are the things that really go into it behind the scenes that lead to, being able to do it sort of as much as you want to do. Another thing that I have to mention is weather. Weather can be your best friend when you're on the water or your worst enemy. And when it comes to guiding, being able to read weather and make calls on whether you should take your clients out or not is, I would say, the most stressful thing for me. It's not so much about the fishing and whether I'm going to put them on fish. I have complete faith in my abilities to do that if I can get on the water during a good weather day. But making those calls, to your customers saying, you know what, I think we should reschedule, dealing with the scheduling restrictions that your customers have. Being in Niagara, we're a huge tourism area, and sometimes people are only here for a few days or maybe a week. So if you get a bad weather day, that trip's gone. You're not making money from that trip, so you've got to move on and you've got to find either another trip or you've got to do another trip, an extra trip in a few weeks' time. So scheduling and the weather is one of the most stressful, if not the most stressful thing for me about being a guide, and how you manage your customers and their expectations around weather and conditions is something that I'm learning all the time. Every trip that I book, everybody's different that comes on board. They have different expectations. They have different things that they're looking for with you when they spend time with you on the water. So that's a huge thing about this business is dealing with customers and dealing with Mother Nature, which is never consistent. So guys, I think that gives a pretty good outline to how I became a guide, some ins and outs of the industry that, I hope that you find interesting and new, things that maybe you didn't think about whenever you think about fishing guides and the lifestyle. I hope that you found this week's episode enjoyable. I'd like to thank you once again for listening to the Love of Fishing podcast. Kicking off season 2, it's been great to chat about becoming a fishing guide, and I hope that you'll stay tuned to the show because we have a lot of great guests. It's not just going to be me rambling on about guiding and salmon and stuff. There's going to be some of that too, but we're going to have great guests this year. So thank you very much for tuning in on Spotify and also on YouTube this year. This week and every week ahead, we're going to be doing a giveaway every week, just like last year. And we actually have a good friend of the show, Victor Papais, sponsoring the first episode of season 2. This week, we're going to be doing a giveaway of 10 beautiful streamer flies that Victor hand-tied. And all you have to do to be entered for a chance to win is comment your favorite episode of last year's season on this episode. So you have until next Wednesday to enter a comment of your favorite show from last year to enter you for a chance to win 10 of Victor's beautiful streamer flies. Thank you, Victor, again for your support of the show. We'll be back next week with another great episode of the Love of Fishing podcast. Thanks again to Peter's Tackle for being the presenting sponsor of this year's show. Until next week, don't forget to get outside and go fishing. Peace.